Hi everyone, and welcome to our next video on negative and fractional indices. In this video we're going to be looking at some exam questions and how we can achieve best possible marks. Okay, so our first question is on the screen now. Find the value of 3 to the power of negative 1. Now whenever you have a negative power, as you can see we have a power of negative 1 in this case, you will need to find the reciprocal. And the word reciprocal just means that you need to flip it around. Okay, so 3 just by itself is the same as 3 over 1. Okay, now if we need to find the reciprocal, we just need to flip these numbers over. So the reciprocal of 3 is going to be 1 over 3. Okay, so 3 to the power of negative 1, whenever we have a negative number, we would find the reciprocal and it would just be 1 over 3. Okay, and that will be our answer, 1 over 3. Okay, the next question, we have 4/5 to the power of negative 1. Now we have a fraction to a negative power. Remember, a negative power just means you find the reciprocal. Okay, so we need to find the reciprocal, which means you flip it around. So 4/5 will become 5 over 4. Okay, and that's our answer, 5 over 4. Okay, the next question, now we have it to the power of a fraction. Now anything to the power of a half, you just need to square root. Okay, so anything to the power of a half, you square root. So if you have 100 to the power of a half, that means you just square root 100, which would get you 10. And 10 would be your answer. If you had 64 to the power of a half, you would just square root 64, which would get you 8. Okay, if you had anything to the power of a third, you would cube root it. For example, 64 to the power of a third, you would cube root 64, giving you an answer of 4. So if it's a half, you square root. If it's a third, you cube root. If it's a fourth, you need to find the fourth root. Okay, so 100 to the power of a half, you just square root 100, giving you an answer of 10. Okay, now it's a negative fraction, 36 to the power of negative a half. So every time deal with the negative first. So what does negative mean? You need to find the reciprocal. Okay, and that's what we're going to do. So you're going to find the reciprocal. So 36 will become 1 over 36 to the power of a half, because we've just found the reciprocal. Now because it's to the power of a half, what does that mean? That means we need to square root, and because it's a fraction, we need to square root both sides. So we do the square root of 1 over the square root of 36. Okay, the square root of 1 is just 1, and the square root of 36 is 6. So our answer is 1/6. Okay, next question. So it says find the value of 64 to the power of negative a third. Again, we have a negative, so what we're going to do is we're going to find the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 64 is just 1 over 64, and that's to the power of a third. And remember, whenever anything is to the power of a third, that means you need to find the cube root. And because it's a fraction, you will find the cube root of both sides. So the cube root of 1 over the cube root of 64. The cube root of 1 is just 1, and the cube root of 64 is 4. So our answer is 1/4. Okay, next question. It says find the value of 64 to the power of negative 2/3. Okay, so again, let's work through this step by step. We have a negative, so we need to find the reciprocal. Okay, so we need to find the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 64 is 1 over 64, and that's still to the power of 2/3. Okay, now we need to split this apart. So we have 1 over 64. Let's split the 2/3 apart. So 2/3 can be split into 1/3 and then we can square it. Okay, we can split the 1/3 and the 2 apart. Okay, what does 1/3 mean? It means cube root. So let's find the cube root of 1 and the cube root of 64, and that's going to give you 1/4. Now we've separated out the 2, we now need to square it. Okay, we need to square both sides. So 1 squared and 4 squared, and that's going to give you 1/16, and that's going to be our final answer. Now, if you have a look over here, we've just worked in steps really. First thing first, we found the reciprocal to get this answer over here. Now all we have done, 2/3 is the same as 1/3 multiplied by 2. Okay, we've just separated the 1/3 and the 2 apart because we can easily find 1/3 as the power, and we can easily find squaring as a power. So we've just separated them apart. So we've put the 1/3 over here, we're finding the 1/3 first, and then we're squaring our answer. And then our final answer would get you 1/16. Okay, next question. We have 64/125 to the power of negative 2/3. Okay, let's work through it step by step. We have a negative, so we're going to find the reciprocal. Okay, so we're going to find the reciprocal, which means we flip them around. We will get 125/64 to the power of 2/3. Okay, now 2/3 we can split apart. We can split it into 1/3 and then 2. Okay, so 125/64, we're going to find the cube root of it first, and then we're going to square it. So what's the cube root of 125 and what's the cube root of 64? Okay, so the cube root of 125 is just 5 over the cube root of 64, which is just 4. Okay, now we need to square both sides. So square 5 and square 4. 5 squared is going to give you an answer of 25, and 4 squared is going to give you an answer of 16. So we're going to have 25/16 as our final answer. So again, as you can see, we've worked through this step by step. So we found the reciprocal first to get this. Then we've split up the 2/3 to 1/3 and then squaring it. So 1/3 and then 2. We found the cube root and then we squared it at the end to get our final answer. Okay, our penultimate question now. So we have 25/16 to the power of negative 3/2. Okay, so negative, what does that mean? We need to find the reciprocal. So let's find the reciprocal. It means you flip it around, so we're going to get 16/25, and that's to the power of 3/2. Let's split that apart to 1/2 and then 3. So 16/25 to the power of a half, and then we're going to cube our answer. Okay, so what's the square root of 16? Because it's to the power of a half. What's the square root of 16 and what's the square root of 25? The square root of 16 is just 4, and the square root of 25 is just 5. Okay, now we're going to cube both sides. 4 cubed is going to give us 64, and 5 cubed is going to give us 125, and that's our final answer, 64/125. Again, we've worked in steps. First thing first, we found the reciprocal, and we get this as our answer, and then we will need to split 3/2. So 3/2 is the same as 1/2 multiplied by 3. So that's why we're splitting into 1/2 and then we're multiplying it by 3. If you notice, each time we're making it so the numerator is 1. Okay, and then we're cubing it or squaring it. Okay, we're not changing the denominator, we're just changing the numerator so it's 1, so we can easily find the square root, the cube root, or the fourth root. and then we're cubing it or squaring it. Okay, so we split it into 1/2 and then cubing it. 1/2 just means square root. Okay, so we're going to square root 16 and we're going to square root 25, and then we're going to cube our answers at the end. Okay, now final question is a bit of a challenge. You will only find this at the end of a paper. So it says 3 multiplied by root 3 is the same as 3 to the power of n. We need to work out the value of n. So it's actually quite simple if you look at it. 3 is the same as 3 to the power of 1. So 3 is the same as 3 to the power of 1. Now root 3 is the same as 3 to the power of a half. So if we find 3 to the power of a half, that's going to give us root 3. Okay? So if we had 3 to the power of 1 multiplied by 3 to the power of a half, when we're multiplying indices, we would just add the powers together. So we just need to add 1 over 2. Okay? So we can multiply this by 2 to get 2 over 2, add 1 over 2, and that's going to give us 3 over 2. So that's going to be the same as 3 over 2. Okay, and the value of n is 3 over 2. Now, as you can see, again, we've just worked step by step over here. We've converted 3 into an indice, as we have there, 3 to the power of 1, and we've converted root 3 so it has a power. And now we're multiplying those two numbers, and when we're multiplying, we're adding the powers together. So we would just end up adding 1 to a half, and that's going to give us 3 over 2, which is our final answer. And that is it for this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked it, and one last thing, please subscribe, hit the like button and the notification bell.